A hotel maid knocks on a door she was never supposed to open. Inside, three of the most dangerous men in the world are finalizing a deal that could control an entire criminal empire. She's told to leave, but she hesitates, because in those few seconds she hears something she wasn't meant to hear. Federal seizure. That's when she realizes this isn't just a meeting, it's a setup. So she does the unthinkable. She pulls out her phone and starts recording. Minutes later, one message is sent to the most powerful man in the room. He's lying to you. And in that moment, the entire deal begins to collapse. Please like and subscribe.
The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel, and the man who stepped out was not the kind of man you looked at twice, not if you valued what was behind your eyes. Marco Vitelli moved like the weather, slow, inevitable, expensive. His suit was charcoal Italian wool, hand-stitched in Milan by a tailor who had never met anyone else worth stitching for. His shoes made no sound on the marble corridor. His face, angular jaw, deep-set eyes, the color of dark amber, gave away nothing. He had worn that expression for so long it had become his actual face. People who knew him from his early years, back when he was just a hungry kid from the Calabrian coast with fire in his belly and blood on his hands, sometimes said you could still see the boy in him if you caught him at the right angle, in the right light. Those people were usually wrong, and they were usually gone. He paused at the door of Suite 4201 and straightened his cuffs, a ritual, not vanity, and knocked 3 times. The door opened. Inside, the suite smelled of bourbon and tension. It was the kind of tension you could taste, thick and metallic, like the air before a thunderstorm. 3 men sat at the dining table that had been converted into a war room. Documents fanned across the surface, 2 laptops faced inward. A bottle of Blanton's sat half empty in the center, like a referee nobody trusted. The men were Dmitry Volkov, Russian, 56, gray at the temples and ice in the soul. He controlled the port of Rotterdam's shadow economy, meaning roughly 40% of everything that moved illegally through Western Europe. He had survived 2 assassination attempts, 1 poisoning, and a marriage. He considered the marriage the most dangerous of the 3. Chen Wei, Chinese-American, 41, clean-cut, MBA from Wharton, worked for a shell corporation called Pacific Meridian Logistics that appeared in no government database but moved $3 billion a year. He always wore the same navy blazer and always held a pen he never wrote with. His tells were subtle, but Marco had learned them long ago. Salvatore, Sal, Rinaldi, Marco's own underboss, 50, built like a refrigerator that had been in a fight with another refrigerator. He had the loyalty of a dog and the memory of an elephant, which made him invaluable. What Sal lacked in subtlety he made up for in devotion. Marco sat down without being invited, because men like him were never not invited.
"Gentlemen," he said, "let's not waste each other's time." Dmitri poured himself more bourbon. "You're 12 minutes late." "I was watching the street," Marco said. "Old habit, one that's kept me breathing while better men didn't." That landed. The room adjusted. On the table between them was the outline of what they had all flown, some from overseas, some from across the country, to finalize. A deal 18 months in the making, a consolidation of 3 criminal empires under a single logistical umbrella, a merger that would make them collectively the most powerful non-state organization operating on the eastern seaboard. The plan was clean, the numbers worked, the distribution channels were already mapped. All they needed was a final agreement on the split of territories and a signatures of intent on 4 documents. Simple, elegant, historic. And that's always exactly when things go wrong. 3 light raps, standard. the kind a hotel maid delivers when she's doing her job and not thinking much about what's behind the door. Sal's hand went to his jacket automatically. Marco raised 2 fingers. Hold. And Sal went still. "Turn down service," called a woman's voice from the corridor. Soft accent. Nigerian, Marco thought, or maybe Ghanaian. He was good with accents, the way some men were good with numbers. Chen Wei leaned forward and whispered, "Ignore her." Marco was already walking to the door. "What are you doing?" Dimitri said quietly. "A man who won't answer a door has something to hide. A man who opens it is just a man in a hotel room." He opened the door 6 inches. She was younger than he expected, mid-20s maybe. Dark skin, close-cropped natural hair, hotel uniform, white blouse, black slacks, sensible shoes. She held a small cart, chocolates, fresh towels, a card from the management. Her name badge said Amara. She had steady eyes, not frightened, not impressed, just present in the way that people who do hard, honest work are present, fully, without performance. "Sorry to disturb you, sir," she said. "I can come back." "No need," Marco said. He opened the door wider, just enough to be normal, not enough to be inviting. He stepped slightly to the left so she couldn't see the table. "Just leave the chocolates. We're fine on towels." She held out the small tray. He took it. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. In that second, Marco Vitelli, a man who had stared down rivals, corrupt senators, and Interpol investigators, felt something he hadn't felt since he was 22 years old and was pulling his first real job in the back streets of Naples.
He felt watched. Not observed, watched, as in understood. He closed the door, he set the chocolates on the side table, he walked back to his seat, and he did not think about her again for approximately 8 minutes, which was, as it turned out, exactly 8 minutes too long. The documents were passed, hands moved across papers. Marco read every line. He always read every line, even when everyone else was impatient, especially when everyone else was impatient. And on the 3rd page of the territorial agreement, something made his jaw tighten. It was small, a clause buried in subsection 4B, referencing the Baltimore corridor. The language was standard at first glance, but Marco had a gift for language the way a surgeon has a gift for anatomy. He knew where the vital organs were. The clause gave Pacific Meridian Logistics, Chen Wei's operation, priority rerouting rights in the event of federal seizure. On the surface, reasonable. In practice, if the Vitelli network ever came under federal pressure, Chen Wei's people could legally, within the terms of this agreement, absorb and redirect Vitelli's entire East Coast distribution chain. Temporarily, in theory, but in a world where temporary and permanent are often just 2 names for the same thing, that clause was a dagger aimed at Marco's throat, wearing a 3-piece suit. He set the pen down. "Chen," he said pleasantly, "walk me through subsection 4B. Chen Wei's pen stopped moving. "Standard liability language." "Is it?" "Yes." "Then you won't mind if we remove it." A beat. The room temperature dropped 2 degrees. "It protects all parties," Chen said, "if any one operation faces legal exposure." "It protects your operation," Marco said, "at my expense, during exactly the moment when I am least able to defend myself." Dimitri said nothing, which told Marco everything. Dimitri had read the clause. Dimitri had not mentioned it. Dimitri was waiting to see which way the wind blew. Sal shifted in his chair, the fabric of his jacket straining across his shoulders like a building preparing for an earthquake. "We can discuss the language," Chen began. "We can remove it," Marco said, "or we can end the evening here and I take the next flight home and the 3 of us go back to competing instead of cooperating and everybody loses money for the next 4 years. That's also a choice." The silence stretched. Then a sound. From the corridor outside, faint, almost nothing, the soft whisper of a cart wheeling on marble. Marco's eyes moved to the door. Amara Osei had not meant to stop. She was doing her rounds, 7 more suites on this floor, then she could go home to her apartment in Crown Heights, cook the jollof rice she'd had soaking since morning, call her mother in Accra, and sleep. She had a test on Saturday. She was 2 semesters from her paralegal certificate at CUNY, studying nights and weekends between shifts. She was tired in the good way, the way that means your life is going somewhere. She had not meant to stop outside Suite 4201, but she had heard a name, Baltimore Corridor, and then Federal Seizure.
And then, in a voice she recognized, the tall man who opened the door, the one with the amber eyes and the Italian suit, "Or we can end the evening here." She stood with her cart in the corridor, 5 feet from the door, and she understood with the sudden crystalline clarity of a person who has spent 3 years working nights in luxury hotels and watching the world from its margins that she was standing outside a room where something enormous was being decided, something criminal. She knew the signs. You learn them fast in this work. The cash payments for extended stays, the rooms booked under corporate names, the way certain guests never ordered room service but always had the "Do Not Disturb" sign flipped. She had seen things. She'd kept her head down and kept walking, because what choice did she have? But she had also, 3 months ago, started taking notes. Not for any particular reason, or maybe for every reason. Because the world was what it was, and she had grown up in a country where the powerful did what they wanted, and the ordinary people paid for it, and she had come to America believing it was different, and then found out it was the same, but with better carpeting. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were completely steady. She pressed record. Back in the room, the negotiation had reached its most dangerous point. Chen Wei had agreed too easily to remove the subsection 4B clause. He'd said, "Fine, you're right, it's overreaching, I apologize," and he'd drawn a line through it on his copy with his never-used pen. Marco watched him do it. He felt nothing good, because in Marco's experience, men who gave ground without a fight weren't surrendering, they were retreating to higher ground. "Let's talk about the northern ports," Dimitri said, refilling everyone's glass whether they wanted it or not. "Halifax, Portland, Gloucester." This was the section of the deal Marco had been most looking forward to. The northern ports were worth more than people realized, not in volume, but in flexibility. They were under-monitored. The Coast Guard presence was thin. The local law enforcement was underpaid. For moving certain categories of cargo, the kind that made governments nervous and accountants rich, the northern corridor was the future, and Dimitri was offering to split it 3 ways. Marco nodded slowly. "I'm listening." Dimitri began laying out the proposal. It was good, genuinely good. Marco found himself leaning forward slightly, the way he did when something was actually interesting, and that's when his phone buzzed. Not a call, a message, from a number he didn't recognize. 4 words. "He's lying to you." Marco did not look up from the table. He did not change his expression. He read the message again. "He's lying to you." He put the phone face down on his knee beneath the table's edge and looked at Dimitri. Dimitri was still talking. Charts, numbers, percentages.
His face was calm, practiced, the face of a man who had been lying for so long that the truth felt foreign in his mouth. Marco thought about the message. Unknown number, 4 words, sent to him specifically at this specific moment. One possibility, someone in this room had a second phone and was playing games. Second possibility, someone outside this room was watching. Third possibility, the hotel maid. He picked his glass up, set it down, said, "Excuse me 1 moment," and walked to the bathroom. He locked the door. He stood in front of the mirror and typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "Someone who's been in this hotel for 3 months. Someone who has heard enough. Volkov already sold the northern ports to a federal informant 6 weeks ago. This meeting is a setup." Marco stared at the screen. His reflection stared back. The man in the mirror looked exactly as calm as always. Inside, a hurricane. He came out of the bathroom and said, "Gentlemen, the bourbon is excellent, but I need some air. Give me 5 minutes on the balcony." Sal started to rise. "Alone," Marco said. He stepped onto the balcony. 42 floors up, Manhattan spread below him like a circuit board lit up with 1,000,000 small lives.
The wind was cold and clean. He dialed the unknown number. She picked up on the first ring. "Fourth floor service elevator," she said quietly. 3 minutes. She hung up. Marco looked at the city. He thought about the message. He thought about the clause. He thought about Dimitri's face when Chen gave ground too easily. He thought about the fact that he had built everything he had by trusting one thing above all else, the information that came from the people nobody looked at. Bartenders, drivers, housekeepers, the invisible infrastructure of the world. He went back inside. "I need to step out," he said. "Business. 20 minutes. Dimitri frowned. "We're at a critical point." 20 minutes, Marco said, "or we do this tomorrow." He left before anyone could object. The service elevator was narrow and fluorescent and smelled like industrial cleaner. Amara was waiting with her cart like she was just changing floors, which was exactly the right cover, which told Marco she was smarter than the situation required her to be. "You texted me," he said. "I recorded a call 3 weeks ago," she said. "Volkov, this same suite. He had a meeting with 2 men. I didn't know who they were then, but I've been researching. One of them works for the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force out of Washington. They talked for an hour. I have it all." She held up her phone. "The Northern Ports deal is already dead. Volkov sold you the location coordinates of a network he's already handed to federal investigators. The moment you sign those documents and activate the distribution chain, every single one of your operations using those ports goes dark, with federal agents waiting." Marco said nothing for 3 full seconds.
"Why are you telling me this?" he said. She met his eyes. "Because I've watched powerful men destroy things for 3 years and nobody ever does anything. And because—" She hesitated. Then, "because Volkov has a man named Petrov who runs girls through a transit house in Red Hook. I've been trying to get something on him for 8 months. He's connected to Volkov. If Volkov goes down, Petrov goes down, and those girls go home." The elevator hummed between floors. Marco looked at the phone in her hand. "You could have gone to the police with this," he said. "The FBI is already involved, on Volkov's side," she said. "Who exactly do I go to?" He almost smiled. "What do you want?" he said. "I want Petrov's operation shut down," she said. "Everything else, whatever happens to you and those men upstairs, I don't care. That's your world, but Petrov's is mine." Marco studied her, the steadiness, the nerve, the way she held herself, not like someone asking for protection, but like someone making a deal. She reminded him, uncomfortably, of himself, 20 years ago, before he became the monster, back when he was just a person with a line they refused to cross. "Send me that recording," he said. She did. He listened to 45 seconds of it, confirmed it was real, confirmed the voice was Volkov's. He handed her phone back. "Go finish your rounds," he said. "And, Amara," she turned, "stay off this floor for the rest of the night." He rode back up to 42. He walked into suite 4201 with the same face he always wore and sat back down at the table. "Everything all right?" Chenwei asked. "Everything is perfect," Marco said. He picked up his pen. He looked at Dimitri. Dimitri was watching him with that careful stillness that predators use when they're not sure if they're still the predator. "I want to revise the Northern Ports section," Marco said pleasantly. "I've been thinking. I don't want a 3-way split." Dimitri blinked. "No?" "No. I want to give my share entirely to Chen." A silence that had texture. "That's," Chen began. "Generous." "It is," Marco agreed. "In exchange, I want Chen to take operational lead on the Northern Corridor activation. Full responsibility, full authority." Chen looked at Dimitri. Dimitri looked at the table. Full responsibility in their world had a specific meaning. It meant if anything goes wrong, you own it. You can't deflect, you can't point fingers. You are the name on the door when the building burns. "That's unusual," Chen said carefully. "I'm an unusual man," Marco said. "Sal, get the revised language." Sal, who understood nothing about what was happening but trusted Marco the way mountains trust gravity, produced a notepad and began writing.
Marco watched Dimitri. Dimitri was recalculating. His whole plan, which Marco now understood completely, had been to use this meeting as a way to burn both Marco and Chen simultaneously. Volkov had sold the Northern Ports to federal investigators. He needed someone to activate the operation so the arrests could be made. He needed signatories on documents that would tie Marco and Chen to the network. But now, Marco was offering Chen the entire Northern Corridor, which meant if Dimitri pushed for signatures tonight, the only name that would appear on the Northern Corridor documents was Chen Wei's, which meant Marco was out of the trap, and Chen Wei, who had tried to bury him with subsection 4B, was about to walk into it. "I'm not comfortable with this restructuring," Dimitri said. "Why not?" Marco asked. "Chen gets more. Everyone should be happy." "It changes the balance, Dimitri." Marco's voice dropped half a register. The room physically quieted. "Are you telling me you have a problem with me being generous?" The question was a blade. "Answer yes. Explain why." Answer no, accept the restructuring. Dmitri sat very still. No problem, he said. Wonderful, Marco said. It took 11 more minutes. Chen Wei, sensing something shift but not knowing what, grew cautious. He asked for a recess. He stepped onto the balcony and made a call. Marco watched through the glass, watched his posture change, watched him turn back toward the room with something new behind his eyes. Chen knew. Somehow, in those 11 minutes, Chen had made a call and found out something about the northern ports. Not everything, but enough. He came back inside. He sat down. He looked at Dmitri. I need to reconsider, Chen said. Dmitri's composure, magnificent and practiced as it was, showed its first crack. We had an agreement. We had a discussion, Chen said coldly. Gentlemen, Marco said, leaning back, perfectly relaxed, the eye of a storm. It seems we all need to sleep on this. I suggest we reconvene tomorrow. Fresh eyes. Tomorrow the window closes, Dmitri said. My people, your people, Marco said quietly, should be the least of your concerns right now, Dmitri. And he let that sit. Dmitri looked at him. Marco looked back. And in that look passed everything that didn't need to be said. I know what you did. I know what this meeting was. I know about the informant. I know about the ports. I know about all of it. And you know that I know. And we both know what that means. Dmitri Volkov, for the first time in perhaps 20 years, dropped his eyes first. Tomorrow, Dmitri said quietly. Tomorrow, Marco agreed. He didn't sleep. He sat in his own suite, floor below, different side of the building, and worked the phone until 4 a.m. His lawyer in Washington, a contact at Homeland Security who owed him a favor and would spend the rest of his life wishing he didn't.
2 men in Baltimore who needed to quietly make certain assets disappear before morning. By 5 a.m., the Northern Corridor operation, his portion of it, the real infrastructure that Volkov had not known the full extent of, had been rerouted. New channels, new names, ghost companies within ghost companies. By 6 a.m., Amara's recording had been delivered, through 3 intermediaries and a lawyer, to a federal judge in the Southern District of New York, who was not on Volkov's payroll, because Marco had spent considerable effort over many years learning which ones were and which ones weren't. By 7 a.m., he had made one more call, to a man named Caruso, who handled certain problems in Red Hook. Petrov's house, Marco said. The transit operation. Shut it down. Tonight. Quietly. The women go free. Petrov goes. He paused. Petrov goes to the police, with evidence. Anonymous tip. A pause on the line. That's not usually how we... It is tonight, Marco said. He hung up. He ordered coffee and eggs from room service. When the food arrived, he ate it slowly, looking out over the city turning gold in the early light, and he thought about a woman on the 4th-floor service elevator with steady hands and a phone and a line she refused to cross. He left an envelope at the front desk before he checked out, her name on the front. Inside, a card for a law firm that specialized in prosecutorial misconduct and human trafficking cases, with a note in his handwriting. They'll take your case. They've been paid. Use them well. And below that, 5 words. You changed the game tonight. Dmitri Volkov was arrested at JFK Airport attempting to board a flight to Zurich. The charges included racketeering, conspiracy, and, most elegantly, unauthorized cooperation with federal investigators in a manner that violated his own prior immunity agreements. His lawyer called it a legal impossibility. The judge disagreed. Chen Wei disappeared. Not dead, just gone. The specific kind of disappearance that men of his sophistication engineer when they understand that every version of staying is worse than every version of leaving. He was reported to be in Singapore, or Macau, or nowhere, which is sometimes the same thing. The Northern Corridor operation was never activated. No arrests were made from it. The federal task force that had been positioned to act found only empty warehouses and outdated shipping manifests. They would spend 2 years trying to figure out what happened. They never would. She got the call on a Tuesday.
The law firm, Hargrove & Associates, one of the most aggressive civil rights and anti-trafficking legal teams in the city, told her they had enough on Petrov's operation to pursue criminal charges, civil damages, and a full federal investigation into the network that had funded it. They asked if she would be willing to serve as a material witness. She was in her apartment, the jollof rice finally made and cooling on the stove. Yes, she said. There may be risk involved, the lawyer said carefully. There's risk involved in everything, she said. What matters is which risks you choose. She hung up. She called her mother in Accra. She talked for an hour about everything except what she'd done and what she was doing, and the life she was building out of night shifts and paralegal textbooks and the stubborn refusal to look away. Her mother asked if she was happy. She thought about it. I'm becoming, she said. That's better. He was back in the city he had built his life in. Not New York, not any city you'd find easily on a map of his world. Sitting in a restaurant he owned under his cousin's name, eating a meal prepared by a chef who knew nothing about who paid his salary.
Sal sat across from him, working through a plate of rigatoni with the focused devotion of a man who has earned his dinner. "Volkov's people are going to come looking," Sal said, "eventually, when he's inside and they need someone to blame." "Let them look," Marco said. "And the girl?" Marco set down his fork. "Her name is Amara," he said, "and she did what most people in that corridor would never have done. She saw something. She made a choice. She lived with the consequences." Sal chewed thoughtfully. "She's just a hotel maid." "She was a hotel maid," Marco said. "Now she's something else." He picked his fork back up. "She'll be fine," he said. "Better than fine. People like her always end up somewhere that matters." He almost said, "She reminded me of someone." He didn't. Some thoughts were too private, even for the men you trusted with your life.
The truth about power. Here is what the men in that room understood, and what Amara understood better than all of them. Power is not the ability to destroy. Anyone with enough hate and enough nothing to lose can destroy. Power, real power, the kind that reshapes things, the kind that lasts, is the ability to see clearly when everyone around you is choosing not to. Dmitry Volkov had power and spent it building a trap that closed on himself. Chen Wei had power and used it to plant daggers in contracts, which is the choice of a man who has never learned to trust anything, which means he has never built anything that could outlast him. Marco Vitelli had power and used it the way a surgeon uses a scalpel, with precision and patience and the willingness to wait. But Amara Osei had something none of them had. She had nothing to lose and everything to build. She had a phone with a record button. She had steady hands. She had a line she would not cross and the clarity to know exactly where that line was. And in one night on the 42nd floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel, with a cart full of towels and chocolates and a paralegal exam on Saturday, she walked into the most dangerous room in New York City and changed every plan inside it. Not with violence, not with money, not with any of the currencies those men understood. With truth, the oldest weapon in the world, the one nobody ever sees coming.